Okay, welcome to Torah class. This is a very exciting opportunity for all of us to learn together. I want to thank Sophie for opening her home. I want to thank each of you for being here. I know that it's very hard to make a commitment to come to Torah class. You have to travel, you have to make the time. You always have an ongoing to-do list that looks more like a Megillah. That seems to be endless. And the fact that you take that 1 hour a week to learn is going to permeate the rest of your all your days, all your minutes, all your hours. So I want to welcome all the new everybody here and to celebrate more things and very things. I did prepare a long parsha. We're starting kind of late. I'm gonna try to the best of my abilities to give you as much as I can. At one point, the class does need to end. So if it does have to end before the end of the actual everything that I like to share, I will record it and I will send it within a day or two. I'll ask everybody to please give yourself the quality of time that you deserve. Stay present. For whatever you catch, trust me, it's worth it. And it's worth it not because it's my words, but it's because it's really Hashem guiding us in these very difficult times. So the name of the parsha is Beha'alotecha, which means when you raise up. And for those of us who have been learning for the last few weeks, and if you go back to those classes, it's very interesting that the whole book of Bamidbar is being kind of lifting us up, right? So if you go back, or if you're gonna be listening in today, you're gonna see some ideas that might be parallel. But as we learn, nothing in the Torah is repetition. It's because I guess this idea of elevating ourselves is so important. Otherwise, Hashem will not bother to bring it into our weekly parsha. So the name of the parsha is Beha'alotecha, means when you raise up. And this refers to Hashem's command to Aaron to kindle the menorah. So if you'll remember, we have a Bet HaMikdash. There were few very important things in this Bet HaMikdash. There was the altar, there was the showbread, there was the Kodesh HaKodashim, which is where the Kohen used to go once a year. And then there's this beautiful menorah that the Aaron needed to light. Now, this menorah did not start with the Bet HaMikdash, started prior to that with the Mishkan. Now, the Parsha also includes few things, includes the inauguration of the Leviim, the mitzvah of Pesach Sheni, and there's a beautiful point I'd like to share about that. The Jewish people, the parching Mount Sinai, Har Sinai, the complaints about the manna, the appointments of the 70 elders. 70 elders was a very important group of men that were able to guide us. And then ends by speaking about Miriam's leprosy because of her speaking negatively about Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, at first glance, these stories seem completely unrelated. And if you see and you look back, this happened just on last week's Parsha that seems like it's going all over the place. But when you look beneath it, you're going to see that all this is going to run one single theme that kind of ties together the entirety of the Parsha. Now, what happens after inspiration is the question that we're going to be dealing with today. That's the first question. We're going to have many, many questions. What happens when the flame must begin to burn on its own? And this is the idea of Aaron. This parsha contains one of the most surprising transitions in the Torah. It begins with one of the most uplifting images of the Jewish thought. And what is that thought? Is Aaron actually lighting this menorah. And we see that at this point, the Jewish people already had finished building the Mishkan. The camps are organized. If you remember, I showed you one time in this beautiful book of the Jewish knowledge, which I think you have, how the camp was in the middle was the Mishkan, and all the different tribes were on each side. And a very important point about that we learned is that why were we all, the Mishkan in the middle, and all of us around it? And one of the main points of that is because our GPS, our compass, is not Waze or Google Maps. Your compass and your GPS is when the Torah and Hashem is at the center of your life. Doesn't matter what activity you're doing, we need to understand that anything that you're doing, although it looks very physical, has a spiritual ramification. So it speaks about the camp that are organized. The nation is finally ready to leave Sinai and begin its journey into our promised land. And everything appears to be moving forward exactly as Hashem intended. Now, at the end of the Parsha, is interesting because the atmosphere completely shifts from this elated moment where everything seems to have figured it out. All of a sudden, the people start complaining. They're craving different things. They become dissatisfied with what they're having. Moshe becomes overwhelmed, and Miriam is separated from the camp. So it's interesting because this pretty much seems like our daily life. One hand, we are up here, elevated, excited, moving forward. 5 minutes later, we're not so great, right? And if you want, you could always ask any man about our mood swings, right? But here is going a little bit deeper than that. What began with lighting this menorah, seems to end with struggle. And the question is obvious. How can a parsha named Beha'alotecha, when you raise up the lamps, the very parsha where everything appears to be descending by the end? So perhaps the answer lies in understanding that the menorah is not simply the opening topic of this parsha. It's not just something nice that was put randomly in the beginning of the parsha. The menorah is the lens through which we are meant to understand everything that follows suit in this parsha. So when Hashem commands Aaron to light the menorah, he uses a curious expression. The Torah does not simply say, light the lamp. Instead, it says, Ve'alotecha et hanerot, when you raise up the lamps, when you raise them up. Right? When you go light your Shabbat candles, you're not lifting your candles, you're just lighting your candles. So what's the story here? Rashi explains something really beautiful. He says that Aaron was required to hold the flame to the wick until the flame could burn independently. He's supposed to, if this is my match, he's supposed to hold the fire to the wick until the fire on the wick fully lights up and catches on fire fully. Not like when we light candles sometimes that you light and then you turn around and 3 of them are out. You're not supposed to do that. And it's something really that teaches us the way that we actually light Shabbat candles. When you light Shabbat candles and you strike your match, you're not supposed to go dim, 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 dim. You're supposed to hold the match long enough to give that candle a full light, right? And this is going to, as I'm going to explain soon, going to represent something much deeper. And there's also this idea that the men prep the candles, or you could prep them yourself before Shabbat, meaning you light them and turn them off, so when you come to light the candle, it actually catches on fire. So going back, Rashi explains that Aaron was required to hold the flame to the wick until the flame could burn independently. He could not simply ignite and walk away. He had to remain there until the flame was stable enough to sustain itself, until it was self-sustaining. The Rebbe explains that this instruction is far more than a lesson about lighting a menorah. It's not a technicality how to light this menorah. It's actually a description of the purpose of creation itself. How so? Every soul is actually a lamp. Each of our souls is a lamp that comes in planet Earth to give you a light to this world. You didn't just come here to have a nice life. You didn't come here to be a business person or a mother or whatever you might be. You come in here because your existence is extremely important and necessary in the fulfillment of our mission on planet Earth. Meaning that every Jew contains a divine spark. We all have a divine spark within ourselves, our godly soul. And the goal of the Torah is not merely to inspire a person for a moment. The goal is to reveal that inner spark until the person begins to live from it naturally. What does this mean? When we're lighting Shabbat candles and we're holding that match, it's a lesson for us to life. That when you go about your daily life, whatever Hashem has sent you to do, we're supposed to live intentionally. We are supposed to live passionately. We are supposed to be actually fully involved in the experience of living. Because by you being fully involved and by you giving from yourself and elevating to the max, that is actually what Hashem is putting you through to this journey. So spiritual growth is not measured by how inspired we feel in a particular moment. It is measured by whether the inspiration eventually becomes part of who we are. It's about, like yesterday when I was on that plane, did I feel the numbness when there was turbulence? Or did I actually was able to understand that there's God flying this plane and therefore can I could chillax? And it's that idea of internalizing Torah. Torah is not supposed to be an outside intellectual experience that is nice and I'm so I had a great class. That's not what Torah is all about. What Torah is all about is how could I take that Torah and permeate my life with it. So this is why the menorah stands at the beginning of the Parsha. It introduces the mission of the Jewish people. Hashem did not create the world simply so that there will be occasional holy moments. If that will be the case, you will have your Yom Kippur more often. If that will be the case, you will be in a spiritual journey more often. That's not the reason why. It introduces the mission of the Jewish people. He created the world so that the physical world itself will become a dwelling place for his presence. And if you listen to any of the classes from Bat Midbar on, it's interesting how this idea of Dira Betachtonim, Dira means the dwelling place, Betachtonim in the physical lower world, has been the current theme from the beginning of this book that we're in the middle. So the task is not to escape the world. The task is to take this holy teaching, the wisdom of Hashem, and transform the world that we live in. So Sinai was never a destination. And we learned, I think 2 weeks ago, that the purpose of the Jewish people leaving Egypt was to arrive to Sinai. But it's interesting because once they arrive on Sinai, they didn't remain on Sinai. We're still not at Sinai. We continue, meaning that Sinai is supposed to be a preparation for us. So this idea helps us understand something fascinating about the structure of this book of Bamidbar. Until now, the Jewish people have been preparing. How did they prepare? They received the Torah. We built the Mishkan. We organize ourselves on the camp. Everything has been a preparation. But now the journey actually begins. Spiritually, every one of us experiences our own version of Sinai. We all have moments when we feel very excited and yes, I want to pray, and you take that siddur, or you go and you take a class, or you really want to do this mitzvah, you want to donate to a great cause. We all have that moment, that spark. We all have these moments of inspiration. We all have these moments when, wow, Hashem, you're really taking care of me. You got my back, right? I didn't lose that flight, or I made it on time, or whatever the case may be. And we have moments when the Torah feels alive and everything makes sense. We feel good. The problem is that many people mistakenly believe that those moments are the destination. And when we go and we confront physical life that happens to be very difficult, we don't feel so excited. We don't feel that we have the energy to keep going. We sometimes feel defeated. But the reality is that these moments of height are not the ultimate purpose. Sinai was never meant to be permanent place. Eventually, Hashem tells the Jewish people to leave the mountain and enter the desert. And this is mind-boggling. Why would Hashem bring us to the highest of moment, pretty much come face to face with Hashem, and then say, okay, have a nice trip? What is the purpose of that journey? So the real test begins when the inspiration fades, when you don't feel excited anymore and you return to your normal life. Anyone can feel connected while standing at Sinai, right? When you feel very spiritual, you feel very godlike. The challenge is to remain exactly as godlike when you are in the desert, when you're struggling, when things look hot and there's nothing there and I don't understand what my purpose on planet Earth is. And the challenge becomes not only feeling the holiness, but bringing the holiness into ordinary life. And that pretty much has been the theme we have been learning. For those of you who did not hear those classes, they're available. You could go back and listen because we're actually not learning the Parsha today. We are actually going on a journey. That's what our Torah class is all about. It's taking the Torah and living with it. So we know that there are holy moments and there's holy life. This is one of the deepest ideas of this Parsha. Many people divide life into 2 categories. I have moments where I feel holy. I'm praying, I'm learning Shabbat, mitzvot, and then I have my regular moments, the rest of my life. And the Torah rejects that division because the purpose of Judaism is not merely to create those holy moments. That's not the point. The purpose of Judaism is to create a holy life. It's not feeling all elated because I prayed today and I really had great kavana. Good for you. Great. do it more. The question is, what happens with the rest of your day when you take those ideas that you just read on your Siddur? Thank you, Hashem, for giving me vision. And throughout your day, you're saying, oh, wow, Hashem, thank you for giving me my vision. And I'm not talking only about your physical vision. I'm telling you, you're giving me the idea to discern, should I follow this path or that path? That's vision. Am I taking my prayer into my daily life? Divine consciousness must extend beyond the synagogue. It must enter our marriages, parenting, friendship, work, homes, and every mundane activity that we have. But the real challenge is not finding Hashem in obvious places, right? And I know because when we do the Torah class in the shul, a lot of people, after they go to the Aron, and they pray, and they feel really on a high. The question is what happens when you leave. The real challenge is finding Hashem in ordinary places, because this is precisely why the Jewish people must leave Sinai. Because as long as spirituality exists only in the mountain, it has not yet transformed reality. And if you remember, I bring it back for us to tie it down. This idea about transformation is the whole point why Chava ate from the Eitz Hadat, from the tree of knowledge. The only reason why Chava actually ate from the tree of knowledge was not only because she disobeyed, it was because by her eating from the tree of knowledge, going down, being sent out of Gan Eden, of this spiritual place where everything is taken care of, now I need to hustle with life. And the question is, in the midst of this hassle of life, can I still remain a spiritual being? It's about going out there and transforming life through the spiritual elevation that you experience in those high moments, in your Sinai moments. And now we move on into something really beautiful. Before the nation begins its journey, the Torah tells the story of an individuals who were unable to bring a Korban Pesach. And basically, the story goes that you could give the Korban Pesach, but if you're disqualified for certain reasons, you could not give it. And therefore, comes Pesach Sheni. So the question is, how did this Pesach Sheni come to be? So through no fault of their own, they were spiritually disqualified from giving the time one. And most people will have accepted the situation, right? Sometimes you say, okay, fine, I cannot participate on this holy act, or I can't go be called up to the Torah, or I can't. But instead they approach Moshe and ask, Lama Nigara? Why should we lose out? Why should I lose out? I also want to give my Korban to Hashem. And those words change history forever, right? We're still keeping Pesach Sheni, although many people don't even understand why we're keeping it. The Longe created Pesach Sheni. They said, I will not remain in status quo. No, it's not my fault. I was not able to give it. I need a second chance. I need a second opportunity to connect with Hashem. This story introduces an important distinction. We know that we have two forms of dissatisfaction. One that destroys a person, and the second one that elevates the person. The people who requested Pesach Sheni were very dissatisfied. I can't be a part of it. But their dissatisfaction pushed them towards Hashem rather than away from Hashem. They say, I need to get a chance. Their story reminds us that Judaism never defines a person by where they are right now. And we always go in our class through the same idea that it's not about position, but it's about direction. It's not where I find myself today, but it's where is my going? Where am I going? There's always another opportunity. There's always another door. There's always another chance to reconnect with Hashem. And in many ways, Pesach Sheni becomes the perfect transition into the rest of the Parsha. Because shortly afterwards, we encounter another form of dissatisfaction altogether. We see that when the journey began, it got actually hard. The nation begins traveling, and almost immediately the complaint begins. You guys remember the Parsha? We can't have this, we can't have that, I wish. So at first glance, it seems shocking. How could a generation that witnessed the Exodus, the splitting of the sea, the revelation at Sinai, become dissatisfied so quickly? And think about your own lives. When you have it all, and you look back at your life, and you literally have it all, and you're in a bad mood. And it's interesting because, unfortunately, more and more in New York, we feel it, right? We all have parts of our home that we don't completely adore, or our closet, or our whatever it may be. And then you walk down the street and you see somebody who doesn't even have a home, right? And all of a sudden, this awareness comes to haunt you. And you're like, wow, thank you, Hashem. You could think, oh, what is he doing on the street? But the real lesson is, thank you, Hashem. So yeah, perhaps the Torah is teaching us something very human, that the Jewish people are living an environment of constant revelation and entering an environment where they must do the work themselves. Suddenly, they are confronted with uncertainty, responsibility, and challenge, which is exactly the same thing that happened with Chava and Adam. They were takers, and all of a sudden, they became laborers of the land, right? They had to take responsibility and work at it. This often is where spiritual struggle emerges. When life is exciting and connection feels easy, when life becomes routine, connection requires effort. The people begin longing for Egypt. They remember the food. Oh, look what we had. Here what we have. We have this man. Look at it. Doesn't look so exciting. They started romanticizing the past, and they forget the slavery. How could a people who endure the worst slavery be wanting to go back? How could you? So this often is what happens when we become spiritually disoriented. When a person makes the wrong choice, it's not because the person is bad or doesn't want, but because you have lost focus of what your GPS is. Where is your long-term goal in planet Earth? So we begin searching for fulfillment in places that cannot truly satisfy us. The soul is hungry, but it mistakenly looks for nourishment in the wrong places. And it's very interesting because we all know that there is something called, only in America, you have things that are fun, right? So you could go to a park, you could go for a run, you could go. But in America, we have something called shopping, ING. And it seems to be a gateway. We're going shopping. It's funny, my husband yesterday when we were leaving, we had 2 hours before my flight was leaving. He was taking me to the airport. And he said, Rahel, where you want to go? Right? We're in Florida, we're running with my mother-in-law. And he looks at me and he says, you want to go shopping? And I look at him and I said, shopping? My suitcase is closed. No, it's actually 50 pounds. So no, can't, right? It became a destination. What is it that we're lacking, that we're filling up with this shopping? So there is a difference between the second nature and the first nature. And it's interesting because the Rebbe then introduces one of the most profound ideas of this parsha. That many people assume that spiritual growth means training ourselves until holiness becomes second nature. I pray every day, I pray every day, I pray every day, until I'm naturally going to get up, even though it's not my nature, second nature, and therefore I'll try to push myself and I'll pray. How we do that? Through repetition, through discipline, through consistency, right? I am sure that in any of the schools, Jewish schools now, right now it's 10:25, most kids already pray, most kids already give tzedakah. Now hopefully they're in the Chumash, right? Repetition. We slowly become more refined through this process. Obviously, yes, that is certainly true. But the Rebbe says that there is something even deeper than that. What if holiness is not our second nature? What if it's our first nature? What if the deepest truth about a Jew is that the soul is already connected to Hashem? Because a lot of times we go through this journey thinking, I'm not so holy. Because our human makeup. But the reality is that when Hashem created Adam, he blew the neshama. He didn't say, let there be a man. The whole rest of the world is, let there be a man, let there be a world. But to man, he fashioned us. He took a special care to create us in a different way. What is this different way? We are created in the image of Hashem. And therefore, we have inside of us what some call pinteleyid. You have the spark of godliness that is actually your driving force. That's the real you. It's not outside. It's not how pretty, how thin, how tall, how much money I have, how social status. All that is second. The real deal is your neshama. So then spiritual growth is not about becoming someone else. It's not like, oh, I need to change myself and be more like, those ladies in Brooklyn. No, that's not what it's all about. It is about uncovering who you already are. It's about going back home within yourself and discovering who you are. What is the light that you could bring into this world? So the flame is already inside the wick. And Aaron was not creating it. He was actually revealing it. And perhaps that changes the way we look at ourselves. We're not trying to manufacture a connection with Hashem. We're not supposed to say, okay, I need to see how I could become. We're trying to uncover that connection that has always existed within ourselves. And that is one of the reasons I keep saying to you girls, let's learn the Parsha. And if I go back to when we were all in vitro, it says that there was an angel sitting with us, learning the whole entirety of the Torah. Everything you will ever learn in the Torah in this lifetime, you already learned it. And the moment of birth, the angel goes like this, he tapped us, and we forget the whole Torah. Why bother? Why this angel is sitting with us, teaching us the whole Torah? Because it's not something anew when you learn Torah. You are relearning. It's a skill that you have forgotten, and by you learning Torah, you're rediscovering it. And I remember I said that maybe once in one of our many classes that when I was in Colombia growing up, I was obviously not going to Jewish school. There were not many. And we had the challenge to move many times. And right before we moved from the main city to the smaller city, my parents put us in a Jewish school for a very short time. I think it was 6 months. And in these 6 months, we learned Aleph, Bet, Gimel, and how to write and how to read. And then for 8 years, we didn't do any reading in Hebrew. We were not going to Jewish schools. And then we moved to Caracas, and they give us the entrance test. They give us the entrance test. It's in Hebrew. And all of a sudden, I'm reading because they needed to see what level they put us in the Hebrew class. And the teacher says, I don't understand. You come from 8 years of non-Jewish school. Like, where did that come from? It's because it was already there. So it was only resurfacing. And that's basically what your neshama is doing by you learning Torah. You're tapping within a part of yourself that is hidden. So the hidden meaning of rebellion. This idea allows us to understand one of the most radical insights, that the Torah certainly does not approve of people's complaints. Yet the Rebbe explains that hidden rebellion itself is a deeper spiritual truth. A person rebels, and think about yourself when you rebel, because they refuse to accept the current reality. So I'm rebelling, I don't want it. When you say to your kids, no, they say, what do you mean? They don't want what you're saying. On a deeper level, the soul is also refusing to accept something. It refuses to believe that life is meant to remain superficial. It refuses to settle for shallow relationship with Hashem. And the tragedy is not the yearning itself. The tragedy is that when that the yearning becomes misdirected. Instead of using the restlessness to move closer to Hashem, the people attempt to satisfy it through physical cravings. And just think about for 1 minute, when are you eating the most? You're not eating the most when you're having your lunch. You're eating the most when you're stressed out, right? We all have our stash of chocolate somewhere, right? Or whatever is it that you like. Me is chocolate, please, right? I do call my kids, guys, because I'm getting in Brooklyn, guys, right? My husband's like, come on. I said, you need to buy 20 of them, right? When are you filling yourself up with all these little things? When you feel emptiness inside. So the soul longings becomes distorted. But beneath the distortion remains something holy, a soul searching for something more. In those moments when you feel empty, when you're hitting your credit card and you're buying all the shoes and the bags and the dresses, which I'm sure we all have, right? Think about your closet for 3 seconds, right? I was in Florida now, and I always like to shop when I'm in Florida because I'm relaxed. right? I don't have to carry. I put it in the car and drive. And my son, I saw a pair of shoes, and my son is like, but do you need mine? I think like you have something almost exactly. I said, yeah, but the heel is just like an inch shorter. Do you really need it? What is it feeling within yourself? I'm not saying don't take the physical world and utilize it for Kedusha. Use it. But don't think that by you filling up yourself with physicality, you're going to nourish your soul. You're not going to achieve that. So now we move into Aaron's secret. This also explains why Aaron chose to light the menorah. Technically, others could have done so, but yet the Torah emphasizes Aaron because Aaron possesses a unique gift. Anybody knows what his special gift was? Think for a second.
Shalom. Shalom.
Shalom. What else?
Like peace. He made peace with people.
Yes. He loved every Jew. He was the epitome of Ahavat Israel. Aaron did not define people by their failures. He looked beyond the surface and saw their essence. Can you see the essence on someone even if that person is hurting you? Can we? So he understood that every person contains a flame. We all have this pinteleyed within ourselves. And even when the flame is hidden, even if that flame is hidden, this is why Aaron became the model for Jewish leadership. The role of a teacher, a parent, a spouse, and a friend is not to force change onto another person. And for those of you who were raised in the 70s and 80s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You did whatever you did because your father said so. Period. End. No questions, no explanation, right? It is to, but we're not supposed to force onto someone else. It is to help reveal the spark that is already within the other person. Because real transformation happens when someone begins to believe in goodness that has always been there. It's when I'm able to take another person and bring them about to their full place. And it's interesting because a parent, who's a real parent? A real parent is the one who is humble enough to see where the child is at and nurture the child to go to the next place for the fulfillment of the child. It's not the parent who says, you must be a doctor. That's what you want. That might not be the character trait of that child. And if you look, how many times a person goes to college, spends 10 years, becomes the greatest doctor, to 5 years later says, I want to be a lawyer, really. How many times? Because it's not about the person, it was about what the parent wanted. So that's really when real transformation happens. Now, what is the final lesson of Miriam? The Parsha concludes with Miriam, one of the greatest women in Jewish history. And what's happening with her? She stumbles. She speaks negatively. And it's interesting because I love when there's a Parsha about a Jewish woman, it means we need to look even deeper, girls. Because what they went through is only for us as a springboard for us to know how to behave on planet Earth. What does she do? She speaks about Moshe and is separated from the camp. She's being sent out because of the Sarab. Yet the Torah tells us that the entire nation waits for her. What is going on? If she's sent, let's just move on. No one moves forwards until she returns. And perhaps this is the final lesson of the Parsha, that a mistake does not define a person. We're going to make many, many mistakes. A fall does not define a person. How many times have you fallen? The whole point is not to remain down. The main point of falling is to standing up ahead. What is falling really? Is when you look at the Olympic Games and you see these people who jump very far, they push back. Or when you have somebody must tell me, this thing that you pull, a bow and arrow or archery, how far does the arrow go? It goes as far as you pull it back. The more you pull it back, the farther away it's going to go. And this is what Miriam is teaching us, that you could fall to the lowest. You could have Sene Lashon Hara, you could take leprosy, you could be sent away of the camp, but that's not the end of your life. And at difficult moments does not define a person. We all struggle with something. I know we all have Instagram and we all post our best pictures, right? Everybody's telling me, commenting on the picture I wore yesterday, right? Do you really put yourself out there when you're on your hardest? Some people do, and the rest of us raise the brow. Why is this person showing the dark side? But the reality is that your dark side is your gateway to your greatest achievement. And Hashem is only putting you to that darkness to launch you forward. So the soul remains greater than the stumble, and therefore the nation waits, because one moment can never erase a lifetime of greatness. So when the flame burns on its own, is the next thing we're going to speak, and with that we'll close the class. Now we could finally understand the title of the Parsha. The Menorah is not merely the opening scene. It's actually the story of the entire Parsha. How so? It's the story of Sinai and the desert. Why? Sinai represents the Menorah, the light that we got from Hashem, as a gateway to actually we could work through that desert and come out in peace and enter the land. That moment of elevation was a booster of energy to bring us through the darkest of time of the desert and actually make us reach home. The story of inspiration and struggle. You might feel very inspired, but you need to understand that we don't remain on inspiration state, right? We're not supposed to be all happy. If somebody's too happy, you're like, okay, wait, what's happening, right? It kind of gets scary. It's because that person needs to go. That happiness is supposed to push forward the person when they're going through the struggle. It is the story of the ascent in order to descend. We are not supposed to remain up here. We also not remain supposed to be flatline. We're not supposed to be straight. We are meant to, and we're made to go down and then raise up, and then go down and raise the up. And if your low is very, very low, you need that is to understand that this is really a launching pad. So this is the story of every Jew. Hashem is not trying to create something new within us. He's revealing what has always been there. He's uncovering that divine spark hidden beneath the surface of your ordinary life. And the goal is not simply to light the flame, but the goal is to reveal it, and so it's completely that begins to burn on its own. And that's what happens when we discover our highest moments and our lowest moments. We never separate two journeys. It's one journey that has two different stations. And it's interesting because one time I heard that who's a real leader? So a lot of people say, well, it depends the amount of followers, right? Especially in social media right now. How do you know when you hit it right? When you have 2 million followers on Instagram. The reality is that's not a leader. A leader, just like Aaron, is the one that could take that candle and go to the second candle, that fire, and go to the candle and give it enough light until that candle now has a life of its own. That is a real leader. A leader is not who creates followers. A real leader is the one who creates more leaders. Because that is really the point of life. The point of life is, where did Hashem put you today? What are your shortcomings? A lot of times we look at our shortcomings, you're like, oh, if I wasn't so, you fill in the blank. If I wasn't so distracted, or if I wasn't so busy. Or many times we go through life saying, oh, I really wanted to call you, but I wish, but, right? We always go through this life of trying to measure up to something that isn't real. You need to look within yourself and to see which are the things that Hashem has given you that are unique to yourself, which are the challenges, which are hard. Get yourself a right support system. That's what this is all about. Infuse your life, your mind, your soul with Torah. And that is exactly the point that will launch your divine spark and light it up to the point that now you could go out there and light somebody else's life. I hope you girls enjoyed the class. And I think that it's, I like to take 2 minutes to just present Sophie. I hope I didn't buy this book for you yet, but I have bought it for you and I hadn't given it. This is Megillah Esther. That your no home should be built, continues to build what you accomplish here, because you came here in one level and you raised to, wow, an incredible level. And it's, I always say that the end of every stage in life, every step in life, when it ends, you think, oh my God, it's over. And we feel so stressed out because there's a change, there's a shift. But the end of every stage in life is the beginning of launching you to the next step forward, to the next step ahead. I hope you girls enjoyed today's class. And what I take home from this parsha is this idea that sometimes you feel that you need to light yourself. You get us up for books, you go to the gym, you do all these different things, but the lights of the menorah were not being lit by themselves. They had someone lighting them. They had Aaron lighting them. And that's really our purpose in life, is to go seek those souls that are half on and infuse them with the amazing, beautiful light of our Torah. I hope you girls enjoy.